And welcome to the 2017 season preview. Let's take a look at some of the changes happening this year. Let's take a look at the regulation changes for 2017. Let's take a look at the 2017 Formula One car launches. F1 2017 season calendar. Formula One 2017 season predictions. So, starting off by reviewing the favourite three teams for the 2017 season: Mercedes, Red Bull Racing, and Ferrari. Now, it's been an interesting session of winter testing, in which it seems the gap between Mercedes and their two rivals has closed quite dramatically, and it's entirely possible that Mercedes no longer have the fastest car. However, we don't know the fuel loads used in testing, so I still think Mercedes will be strong, but I think possibly Ferrari might start the season with a slight advantage. And whilst Red Bull's new car, the RB12, looks quite conservative, I think their in-season development should be amongst the strongest, given they've got Adrian Newey to develop their aerodynamics. So that should be fascinating to watch. I actually predicted a three-way battle for the title between Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari, and it'll just come down to who has the best in-season development. Will it be Mercedes with their engines? Will it be Red Bull with their aerodynamics? I just don't know, frankly. And Ferrari are sort of in between Mercedes and Red Bull with aerodynamics and engines. Stronger than Red Bull on engines, but not quite as strong as Red Bull in the aerodynamic department. The two fastest times of testing were set by Ferrari, so Ferrari kind of go into the 2017 season as favourites. However, many would also count Mercedes as favourites because they've won the title. They've won both the drivers and the constructors' title for the past 3 years, and I do expect them to be very strong this year, just not as dominant as we've seen over the past 3 years, because this is a big regulation change and it's brought the top teams closer together, and I think that's fantastic. And to comment on the changes, Red Bull and Ferrari have still got the same driver lineups. Red Bull with Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. Arguably, that's the strongest driver lineup in this field. And Ferrari with the two champions, Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen, of course. The change is at Mercedes, and 2016 world champion Nico Rosberg has retired, and he's been replaced by Valtteri Bottas from Williams. And Lewis Hamilton remains at Mercedes, of course, and it'll be fascinating to see how the 3 times world champion deals with Bottas, who has put in some quite decent performances at Williams, particularly in 2014 when they were very strong. So, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari. Who's going to win the championship out of those 3 teams? I have no idea, but rest assured, those 3 teams are the favourites by quite a long way in 2017. 4th position downwards is harder to predict, because last year Force India did a fantastic job to catch and overhaul the Williams team and finish a season best 4th in the Constructors' Championship, the best team behind the big 3 of Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari. And for a team as small as Force India, that was a fantastic achievement, and they've got a lot of quality and depth despite a somewhat limited budget. So the question is, can Force India achieve their goal of breaking into the top 3? It's going to be very difficult. The only way I see it happening is if either Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari have made a major design error in their cars. Otherwise, it'll be 4th position at best for Force India this year. And, of course, they'll have to beat Williams again. And the real unknown in the midfield battle is McLaren Honda, because I think they've made a massive step forward in aerodynamics, but their engine has been very unreliable in testing. I think they made a big step forward in power, and that has meant the reliability is out of the window now. So they've got to get their reliability sorted if McLaren Honda are to move on finish any higher than 6th that they finished in 2016. However, they have a big budget, and a very strong lineup in Fernando Alonso and Stoffel van Dorn. So if the McLaren Honda turns up decent, both of their drivers will extract the maximum from it, particularly Fernando Alonso, who is a double world champion and still every bit as good as he ever was at overtaking. So it'll be fascinating to see how McLaren Honda get on in their 3rd year of the relationship. If this year turns out to be a disaster for them, McLaren could very well ditch Honda and go back to Mercedes power. The only problem with that is there wouldn't be a works team anymore, so challenging the factory Mercedes team with the customer Mercedes engine would not be easy, but it would be better than having an unreliable engine as we've got now. So McLaren and Honda need to work on their issues. Actually, those 3 teams, I'd say Williams are the weakest in terms of driver lineup. They've been forced to let Valtteri Bottas go to Mercedes. No doubt this will have made them a little bit richer, as well as the hiring of rookie driver Lance Stroll, who was rumoured to bring in roughly about $25 million. So, yeah, and they've rehired a retired driver Felipe Massa just to ensure some continuity from 2016, which is a good idea, really. But so the driver lineup of Williams not looking as strong as Force India and McLaren. And I haven't mentioned Force India's driver lineup. They remain with Sergio Perez, who scored 2 podiums in 2016, and they get Ocon, Esteban Ocon, who impressed at Mana last year, and this will be his chance to score some big points. So, yeah, the battle for 4th will be very interesting, and by no means will it just involve Force India, Williams, and McLaren, because I believe that Toro Rosso and Renault will also be contenders for 4th. So that's potentially 5 teams battling for 4th position in the Constructors' Championship. So that's going to be exciting. Now this is from 7th downwards. So Toro Rosso finished 7th in 2016 with 63 points, which is more than twice the points of Haas F1, who finished 8th. And of course Renault were forced to inherit a subpar car, and they finished 9th. However, I expect of those 3 teams, based on their budget, based on their ambition, it's Renault that should move forward the most. However, it looks from testing that it's Toro Rosso have actually made a bigger step towards the front of the field, so I expect Toro Rosso to finish in the top 6 at the very least, and they could finish as high as 4th if they can beat Williams and Force India and McLaren, and it's entirely a possibility that they can. This year's STR12, it's got the same Renault engine as the Red Bull, and they've really taken a step forward aerodynamically, so I desperately look forward to see what Toro Rosso can do. And they start Carlo Sainz, who's a very decent driver, so if the car's good, expect Sainz to put it right up there. And of course they've got Daniel Kvyat, who is quick. He's not always confident, he doesn't always get the best of the car, and his demotion from Red Bull back to Toro Rosso last year hit mentally, and it took a while to get over that. But once he was putting in some decent performances at Toro Rosso, so both the drivers should perform well this year in what is a dramatic step forward in car, and it would be fantastic. It would be fantastic to see if Toro Rosso can indeed finish as high as 4th. Now, Haas are a new team. They finished 8th out of 11 constructors last year, which of course included Mana, who are now defunct, despite scoring that point. So, and Haas did a fantastic job to score points in their first 2 races. But they only scored points in 3 of the races. They scored 29 points, and all courtesy of Romain Grosjean, who of course remains at Haas. Gutierrez, who failed to score any points last year, is out. He has been replaced. He's been replaced by Kevin Magnussen, who was at Renault last year. and he did some impressive races at Renault, despite not always excelling in qualifying. So, and the car looks decent. It doesn't look like a big step forward from last year's car. It looks like last year's car with better dimensions, as I previously written there, but it looks a step forward anyway. But whether Haas can do any better than the 8th place, it'll be a big ask, frankly, and I actually think they'll finish 9th this year, simply because Renault will finish ahead of them, I do believe, because they've got a big step up. And Renault have hired Nico Hülkenberg, who comes in from Force India. He wanted a multi-year deal with the factory team, and that's exactly what he's got. And he's got a capable team in Joyland Palmer in his 2nd season of Formula 1 this year. He was impressive, particularly in qualifying last year. He didn't always do well in the races, but scored a point. So the Renault rival will be very interesting, and it will be interesting to compare Renault actually to their customer teams Red Bull and Toro Rosso, who I fully expect to be in front of the factory Renault squad. But within a few years, Renault should be running at the very front, and that's the least you'd expect from them, really. So some one midfielders, Toro Rosso are the ones who've impressed me the most. Has continued to impress, but Renault should be Has. So we've done the front runners, we've done the best of the rest, we've done the midfield battle. So all that remains for me to talk about is the team who will be at the back of the grid. Unquestionably, this will be Sauber. They only just managed to beat the Manor team last year through a wet race in Brazil, in which Felipe Nasser was able to score 2 points. Despite that, Felipe Nasser has been fired for this year, and Pascal Wehrlein is a very solid replacement. He comes in from Manor, and if the car is relatively decent, he will score points. But the problem is this year's Sauber, it will be a step up from last year, so they could score a couple of points, but the engine departments, they have a year-old Ferrari engine, which puts them at a big disadvantage even to Haas. So for Sauber to challenge and beat Haas, that is the realistic goal, but that has got to be a very difficult task for them, and I'm not quite sure they're up to task. However, they've set a target of getting into the midfield, and that should be their goal, but I think it'll take a couple of years at least before they're back to where they were, say, in 2012, where they were really impressive in 2012, scoring a few podiums. So, however, it's the 25th anniversary. The car looks good. I do like the blue and white livery. I wish Sauber all the best, but the logic is that they will be the team at the back this year. So if they can score any points, that'll be a bonus.